This is Newsroom. Hello again from Johannesburg here in South Africa. My name is Evan Jansen. The show, of course, live broadcast from our studios here in Auckland Park. We are also live on YouTube right now, where the whole show is always available on demand on our YouTube channel. Now, today, we count the cost of the most devastating fire on the Cape Peninsula in recent memory. Then, Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta sent a message to ivory poachers early in the week. We ask if the burning of all the ivory there has any value at all. Then we close the show today with a look at the Arms Deal Commission that is once again underway in the capital. But first, let's get the day's news from Anindo Mal.
Good morning, I'm Anindo Mal. Let's just have a look at the stories making headlines today. Some Cape Town residents who took refuge at the Newsroom community shelter have returned home as an estimated 5,000 hectares of land has been burned. Firefighters are still keeping a close eye on the blaze that broke out in the mountains of Newsroom on Sunday. The wildfire was fueled by a southeasterly wind that spread to the Newsroom, Tokai and Hope Bay areas. After battling to contain the fire for the last 4 days, President Jacob Zuma and Western Cape Premier Helen Zille have applauded the men and women who have been battling the fires across the South Peninsula.
We don't know how heroic the people are who stand up in disasters until a disaster happens. And in this one, I have been awestruck by the caliber of people.
Deputy President and SADC facilitator Cyril Ramaphosa is in Lesotho, where he is expected to pay a courtesy call to King Letsie III. Ramaphosa is also expected to meet with political role players before returning to South Africa. Yesterday, 5 opposition parties in Lesotho formed a new coalition government. This after snap elections over the weekend failed to produce an outright winner that brought an end to Prime Minister Tom Tabane's term of office. The testimony of armed steel whistleblower Richard Young is expected to finally be heard in Pretoria this morning. Young's appearance was postponed yesterday after lawyers for the Defence Department said they had not received adequate copies of his testimony. His evidence, which runs to over 1,000 pages, is expected to take at least 3 days. A state witness in the Luke Tibbetts murder case is to continue testifying about the second murder case Landry Kaku has been charged with. Kaku is facing 18 charges, including the murder of 3-year-old Tibbetts, who was shot by a stray bullet in August last year. Yesterday, 3 witnesses took to the stand at the South Gauteng High Court, sitting in Palm Ridge. 4 women are expected to appear in the Pinetown Magistrates Court this morning in connection with stealing a 6-month-old baby. The baby boy, who was stolen from his mother in Pinetown, west of Durban, has been found in the city centre. It is alleged that 2 women from Changa coerced the mother, promising her a job in Durban. They then disappeared with the child, which was later sold to another woman for 5,000 rand. And in cricket, Bangladesh beat Scotland by 6 wickets in their Pool A Cricket World Cup match at the Saxon Oval in New Zealand. Scotland was sent to bat and Bangladesh set Bangladesh a target of 318 for 8. The Tigers reached the total in their 49th over with 11 balls to spare to edge closer to the quarter-final, thereby putting pressure on England. Remember, you can find all of those stories on Facebook. Just search for Newsroom. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Evan, over to you.
Thank you very much, Anu. Now, after 5 days of an intense firefight, the battle against the Muizenberg blaze seems to finally be under control. Light rain brought some relief and allowed firefighters from all over the country to turn the corner yesterday. Today, the city of Cape Town starts counting the cost of one of the most devastating fires. Now, for the latest, we're going to cross to our reporter, Vanessa Puna. She's with the Table Mountain National Park manager, Paddy Gordon. They are at a helipad, so the pictures are as incoming. A very good morning to you, Vanessa.
Good morning to you, Evan.
Vanessa, before you carry on with your interview, it seems matters are finally getting under control. Just set the scene for us this morning.
Evan, yes, I've just spoken to Paddy Gordon just now, who's also my guest here today. Behind me, though, you can see that the helicopters are once again preparing to go out this morning. We do know that there will be 2 helicopters in the air today, but you can safely say that at this stage the fire has largely been contained. This fire that has devastated huge parts of the South Peninsula has been brought under control by the efforts of hundreds of firefighters, as well as aircraft like the one just going up behind me over the past few days since it broke out in the early morning of Sunday. It's been 4 heavy days for firefighting teams who have worked tirelessly, but we have been advised at this stage that the fire has largely been brought under control, and that at this stage there's no more a risk to property or to homes or to lives at this stage, all depending, of course, on the weather, as Paddy Gordon, the manager of Table Mountain National Park, will tell us. Paddy, good morning to you. We're hoping that the weather conditions remain as is, that the strong winds won't pick up again.
Good morning, yes. We've been very lucky that overnight the wind died down across the peninsula, giving the firefighters a bit of a rest, a bit of a chance to catch up with the fire, and a lot of the fire has been able to get under control because of the change in the weather conditions. We hope that it will remain that way. That will help us to get the fire under control much more quickly.
Paddy, we've heard a figure of 5,000 hectares being thrown around in terms of the extent of the damage, specifically to fynbos and veld. As the manager of the Table Mountain National Park, are you concerned about this? Have we lost any fynbo species? Do people have to be concerned that we'll never see certain species of fynbos growing here again?
Yeah, the figure is about 5,500 hectares of fynbos that has been burnt over the last few days. Most of the ecologists will actually say this is what the veld needs. We haven't had such a big fire in probably 10 years. So in terms of the vegetation, it will be a positive story. The caution obviously is going to be our concern for soil erosion, for mudslides, washaways. We're going to have to caution people not to go into those areas for probably several months. The footpaths would have become unstable. There will be rocks falling and that type of thing. So we are concerned about the area. We have lost a few houses, buildings, probably about 15 buildings have been affected in some way, maybe 3 or 4 completely destroyed. We're very fortunate, no lives lost, some firefighters, some injuries in scrapes and burns, but no lives lost at this stage. But our concern is for any dangerous instability in the area for the next while.
So, Paddy, we can expect firefighting teams still to remain on the scene. I know that mopping up operations could also take a few days before you move off and declare this area completely fire-free.
Oh, yes. This is the time when we've sent the volunteers home to rest because they have full-time lives and full-time jobs as well. But we still retain about 150 men on the ground, and they consist of Table Mountain firefighters, the Department of Environment Affairs, working on fire teams and their resources. And we'll have 2 helicopters still in operation today. Yesterday we had 5 of those. And we'll watch the wind conditions. Certain areas of concern are still the Hout Bay area, the Constantia Wines area, Tokai, where there are logs that are burning everywhere, and those could pick up with a strong wind. So we'll keep our watch.
Paddy, we've spoke about the ecological cost of this fire. Financially, for example, fighting a fire of this magnitude, what does it cost, for example, to keep one of these helicopters in the air? And can we estimate how much in total would have been spent by the time this fire has been contained and put out completely?
Well, first of all, I think we need to applaud the way these different agencies have come together and completely integrated their resources. We're talking about City of Cape Town's resources, Disaster Management Provincial, Sandparks resources, and the Work and Fire program. The helicopters are by far the most efficient. When you fly over the area, you get an idea of how difficult the terrain is to fight a fire if you're a person on the ground. Ravines and falling rocks and things like that. But they come at a cost. These helicopters fly at a cost of 20,000 Rand per hour. And we've flown probably more than 200 hours by now, in addition to spotter planes and other aircraft. Then, of course, our fire engines, our field equipment, manpower, we're probably looking at over 4 million Rand in fire costs by now.
Paddy, and then just the areas that you'll be focusing on today, for example. I know you mentioned that there are still some areas in Turkey, Muizenberg, Hout Bay. If you can just talk to us a bit about where exactly the focus areas will be for today and going forward.
Yeah, we saw yesterday that there's still a lot of unburned vegetation in between the vineyards in the Constantia area. The Turkey plantation has largely been destroyed, but there's still a lot of timber that can burn. And then above Hout Bay, there are areas there that the fire could move and endanger that urban edge. At the moment, we have it under control, but if the winds pick up again, they could become a new danger.
Paddy, we've also then just finally seen an outpouring of emotion, an outpouring of support from the various communities, the various community centres that have opened up. People have dropped off goods, etc. And I'm sure the firefighters would know by now that they've been hailed as heroes. Just in terms of all these resources that have been made available by the community, was really welcome from.
It has warmed our hearts to see how Cape Town has become so generous, and from all sectors of society. People have brought in food non-stop for the last few days. Our cupboards are overflowing, and our heroes out there really feel that they are appreciated. I think the fire has connected the societies in Cape Town amazingly. We are, in fact, even able to supply some of the other fires in the region that are burning, that don't have the same sort of supplies. And we ask people not to bring so much perishable foods. It's really delicious, but they don't last long. And we just would really like to thank the people of Cape Town.
Thank you very much, Paddy. That's Paddy Gordon, the manager of Table Mountain National Park, really saying that this huge across the South Peninsula since the early hours of Sunday morning has been contained thanks to the help and the hard work of all these volunteers, firefighters and all the agencies that have come together to bring this fire under control.
Thank you very much to Vanessa Punas. She's at a helipad there just north of Newlands in the forest there, talking to, of course, let me see, the gentleman was the National Fire Communication. No, he was the manager of the National Park there in Cape Town. But let's move on. Now, the fire in the South Peninsula has caused immense damage, but it can't just be seen as an outright destructive force. Fire plays an instrumental role in maintaining the endemic-rich fynbos shrublands. And to tell us a little bit more about just what good and, in places, bad impact a blaze like this can have, we're joined in the studio by environmentalist Jonathan Hall. Good morning, Jonathan. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, the pictures look very dramatic and of course, it causes mass hysteria in a way. But for the flora in the area, this fire is very good news, isn't it?
It is good news. I mean, fynbos is, it depends on the frequency of fire, essentially, to determine whether it's good or bad news. But a fire like this, fynbos as a vegetation type, is both fire adapted and fire dependent. It requires these burns in order to resprout or reseed. And a blaze like this is it's quite a quick blaze, which is often a better thing than a slow-burning fire because, it rushes through there. The heat is high, but the intensity or the longevity of the heat is quite short.
Yeah.
So fynbos, without fire, there actually essentially wouldn't be fynbos. It would give way to more thicket-type vegetation. And fynbos recovers remarkably quickly. I mean, a lot of the fynbos actually has cork-like bark structures that allow it to go through burns like this and benefit from them.
If you look at the landscape, the quality of the soil is also quite poor, and I would think the fire, once it burns, it really refreshes the soil, doesn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. It releases all sorts of things. I mean, there's some species there that actually require fire or smoke in order to flower, that kind of thing. So it puts nutrients back into the soil. And it's essentially, it's not, it looks very dramatic, but it isn't catastrophic.
What type of, let's talk about the policies of managing fire, and you talk about frequency of fire and so forth. What type of fire management policies do we have here in South Africa? If we don't have, is it something that we need to look at a little bit more intensely, or would that be hysterical straight after a fire like this?
Well, I think South Africa has good fire management policies, and Cape Town, because of their frequency of fires in the fynbos, have excellent fire management policies. And essentially, in a fire management policy, you've prioritised certain things, and the first priority is obviously human life and protecting your firemen. Secondly, you'd have infrastructure, protecting infrastructure. And then further on, you would have environmental impacts and things like that. If you look at this fire in its entirety, you can pretty much assess that from a fire management plan, this is a success story. I haven't heard of any death, human death. And infrastructure, so that's really, often you see images of a burning mountain and a little helicopter carrying what looks like a big bucket of water, and you think, well, that's ridiculous. But what those helicopters are doing is not trying to put out the fire as much as control areas of the fire to protect infrastructure, to allow access to fire services, to do those kinds of things. So it needs to be seen in that light. I mean, South Africa, this fire that we've had has been a good indication of.
The bad news, though, of a fire like this, apart from losing infrastructure and burning down structures, as we see on screen now, the bad news is really for the fauna, which is the animal life and the wildlife we have in the on the peninsula, which would be quite sensitive, I would think.
Strangely enough, you look at fires and you look at the impact it has on some of the species that occur there. Tortoises occur in Fynbos and have been there for millennia.
Yeah.
So this is not a new problem for them. And in the history of tortoises, there's never been a situation where tortoises have outrun fires. They just don't do that. But speaking to Nikki Wright from Free Me about tortoises and fires, she was telling me that their recovery rate is remarkable. They get tortoises handed in there with third-degree burns, and within 3 weeks, those tortoises have recovered. So, those kind of species manage these fires. There's still tortoises, obviously, that perish. But what you also find with fires like this is usually behind the fire, walking through that ash, are white storks or, hornbills on the Highveld, looking for those little charred remains and providing a valuable food source to all sorts of species.
Yeah.
And in front of the fire, you often get concentrations of predatory birds or owls at night that are hunting mice and voles and things like that are running across the road. So there's, it's like everything. There's benefits and there's costs.
I want you to look at a picture that we found on social media. Some people say it's a fake picture, but it's a weasel being flown out of the scenario.
I've seen this picture. This picture's been rocking around.
What do you think of this picture? Is it a fake picture or is it the real thing?
My initial thing was I didn't think that it was a real picture, but I've heard from people that it is, and let's work on the premise that it is. If it's a real picture, that's a North American woodpecker, which get quite big. That, it's hard to work out size here, but that bird could be as big as a kookaburra.
Yeah.
And you've got that weasel on its back, and it's possible that the woodpecker was in the tree, the weasel ran down the tree and got onto its back, and the woodpecker took off in fright. But what you do need to know is that is, I would imagine, from a two-species involvement, that is not a lift club happening. That's going to end in tears. That weasel is hanging on for dear life because he's now airborne, and that woodpecker is flying away trying to get rid of the thing on its back.
So
that's not where are you going, can I help?
It's not a Noordhoek community in peril scenario.
Not at all. That has recipe for disaster written all over it. Yeah.
Written all over it. Well, it is a fantastic picture that we found, and it's a picture that's been doing the rounds. But quite often, animals are much more intelligent than what we'd like to give them credit for. Jonathan, thank you for joining us today and giving us your unique insights into what has not always been a bad thing, the fire in Cape Town, although, Cape Townians, very little happens there. So when something like this happens, I'm sure
they get excited.
I'm sure they get excited. Anyhow, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I'm from Cape Town, by the way, so I have the license to say that. Let's take a look at your tweets. At SABC Newsroom, that's where we live. Samantha Lang says, sad to hear that the firefighters don't help to save the farms and vineyards. Talking about the Cape Fire. Carmen Jacobs says, Cape Fire seems vast majority of flames are out today. Let's hope the southeaster plays along so Cape Townians can breathe again. And there you have a wonderful picture of some of the men and women who have really made the difference. To the heroes who continue to fight the blaze, thank you. We're humbled to see firemen and women in action. Well, to read more about the fires this week, I can't really read that for you. And there you have a picture, of course, the vineyards. That looks like Constantia. Some of the vineyards there. Cape Winelands, yeah, it is Constantia. And Constantia is spelt with a T, by the way. But yeah, thank you. There you have one of the iconic pictures of this fire, of this week of fire in Cape Town. There you have, on the side of a mountain, a fireman trying to extinguish a blaze that's about 20-odd meters high, a plume of flame about 20 meters high. I think this will probably be the iconic picture of this week. But let's have a look at the one that we've decided will be the pick of the day. It comes from Miss Steamy, and it's a heartbreaking picture, really. Broke my heart, she says. There you have a gentleman with his dog who passed away in the blaze. His dog died of smoke inhalation. And there you have that wonderful picture of a man in tears hugging his dog. Yes, we are all counting the cost today of the devastating fire. Some people lost family members in their pets. There you have it. Now, let's talk about money now. Insurance companies are likely to face huge claims following the fire that's been raging around Cape Town and the peninsula at large. Vast numbers of properties have been destroyed and many residents have been evacuated from their homes. Homeowners insurance generally provides coverage for property damage caused by a wildfire. It also covers damage caused by water and slurry used by firefighters who are attempting to extinguish a wildfire. Now, the executive director of PPS Short-Term Insurance, Nazir Hussain, joins us in studio today. Very good morning to you, Nazir. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, how are you, Ben?
Very, very good, thank you. Wildfire, classified as a natural disaster. What rights or recourse do residents have if they are insured with any of the big insurance companies here in South Africa?
Yeah, absolutely. They've got full recourse. I mean, fire is a natural peril and is covered by insurance policies. Generally, if you have a homeowner's policy or household contents, you are certainly well covered by insurance companies in that respect.
How do you classify a fire versus an act of God? This is not an act of God?
It is. Well, it is. It is a natural peril, which can be classified as an act of God or a natural disaster. So it hasn't been caused by humanity or anything of that nature. It's nature.
Some people say it's been caused by humanity because they suspect smokers having flicked their stompies out of the window, and that could have caused the fire. So there's a campaign actually in Cape Town about this. But you guys in the industry, you've now had a look at this the last couple of weeks. I'm sure you've got some sort of estimate that you've put over the damage to homes, property and the like that you've seen. Have you guys come up with a number?
No, it's very difficult to do so because, I mean, this is an ongoing situation. So until such time as all of our policyholders have come through and lodged their claims, can we start to put an estimation on it? You know, we've got to get assessors out onto the properties, assess how bad the damage is to the properties themselves, how much of the contents have been lost, etc. So it takes a while before we can determine what the extent of that is.
It'll be a couple of weeks. Now, what about those very smart people that are used to this kind of thing in the neighborhoods? Is there something like, say, emergency advance payments that people could have in the pocket with an insurer in this case?
It's entirely possible, but it all depends on the insurance companies themselves. And what's very important is for the consumers themselves to ensure that they report this timelessly. So reporting it timelessly to either your broker or directly to the insurance company, if that's how you've done it, is vital. As soon as you can get that information through to them, they can send people out to do the assessments. And in many cases, this has happened historically as well.
Yeah.
Where insurance companies have gone down to the ground level where disasters have taken place and written out checks to assist their policyholders. So it's not beyond the realm of possibility. It just depends how extensive it is and how quickly they can bring relief.
I want to ask you about comprehensive. What is comprehensive cover in this instance? In this instance, would comprehensive cover, would it cover your expensive trees that you've planted in your yard? Does it cover your pool? Your gold ring that you forgot in the house, whatever. Is it that, or is there a further specification that is needed within a general policy for that?
Most policies, if you've taken out a homeowners or a household contents policy, would cover you for the vast majority of that. All of them have limitations. And it depends on how much cover you've taken out, whether you have ensured that you've covered the full contents of your house or the full value of your house. Those items are very important because if you have not made sure that the insurance cover you take out is for the full contents of what you own. There could be a pro rata payment that comes into play because you haven't taken full cover.
Yeah.
However, those items that you mentioned, your pool, your contents, your garden, a lot of them would have certain degree of benefits that you can claim against.
Well, Desiree, thank you for joining us. I'm sure the cost will be counted for the next couple of weeks. Let's now take a look at the front pages from around the world. Starting in Nigeria with the Vanguard, security agents were there last night working frantically to track the whereabouts of the son of the former Chief Justice of Nigeria, who is said to have joined the deadly Islamic State in Iraq and Syria. Then moving to the Metro in the United Kingdom, where the search is still on for teenager Rebecca Watts. She was reported missing on the 20th of February, and her disappearance has resulted into a social media campaign that has reached more than 4 million people worldwide. Still, a lot of response in the international papers to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's speech to Congress this week. There you have a powerful picture on the New York Times front page. Netanyahu warned that a deal under discussion on Iran's nuclear program could pave Iran's path to the bomb rather than block it. US President Barack Obama, who reacted quite cynically, says Netanyahu should then offer other viable alternatives to negotiations. Time for a quick look at what's happening across our country here. We start in Parliament, where President Jacob Zuma will deliver his annual address to the National House of Traditional Leaders. Then in Jan Kempdorp Magistrates Court, 4 schoolboys are expected to appear for allegedly raping and assaulting a fellow pupil in their hostel. And in the Cape Town High Court, the DA will challenge the law allowing for the arrest or removal of people who create a disturbance in the National Assembly. You're watching Newsroom. We'll be back with an update from the Lesotho elections after this.
You can't have a gut feeling about other people's gut feeling.
Ngaba has continued the tradition of passing stories onto the next generation using a platform that offers stories to a far more greater audience.
Zombie no go unless you tell them to go.
This is what the audiences all over the world knew Fela Kuti for.
Join Musam Khalifi on Afro Showbiz every Saturday at 19:30 CH.
Welcome back. This is Newsroom. South Africa's Deputy President and SADC facilitator, Cyril Ramaphosa, has arrived in Lesotho following the announcement of the results of Saturday's election. His visit is expected to consolidate plans for the inauguration of the new coalition government. While in Lesotho, Ramaphosa will pay a courtesy call to King Letsie III. Political leaders, including Prime Minister Tom Tabane, Deputy Prime Minister Motejoa Metsing, and opposition leader and now incumbent Prime Minister Pakalita Mosisili. Now, for the latest, our contributing editor, Vuyo Mvoka, is standing by. Very good morning to you, Vuyo.
Morning, Eben.
An interesting week in Lesotho. Give us the broad strokes. What's the latest?
Well, an interesting week indeed. Well, this morning, in fact, Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa just met with the King. He paid a courtesy call to the King, which he always does whenever he comes here. He will, of course, later on be meeting with the various political party leaders. Chief among them, the 2 leading members of Lesotho's new coalition that is set to run this country, but also the outgoing Prime Minister, Mr. Tom Tabane, a little later on. So he will be meeting with all of them. Obviously, South Africa has a keen interest in seeing it saying it that the coalition does indeed hold, and that the stability, Lesotho doesn't go back where it has just come from. Because do remember that the coalition, it was a coalition that was running this country. It was a crisis within that coalition that forced this nation to go to an early election. So it is the hope of South Africa and indeed other interested parties that that situation, Lesotho doesn't go back to that situation again. But do remember also that even this new coalition is going to be a very, very fragile one, because the very small parties are essential in making the coalition work. And when something like that happens, you do find that at times the minion parties do overextend their hand, because they realize that they have a lot of muscle. They wield a lot of power, because without them, the coalition can basically crumble. So those sensitivities are going to be among the things that one would imagine the facilitator would be dealing with. Really, really telling these parties that, look, it's in your own interest to make sure that this coalition this time around actually holds. Because if you don't do that, then Big Brother South Africa is going to lose faith and confidence in your government, and so will other parties who have a stake in ensuring that the economy of this country holds and that there is stability as well.
Vuyo, have you had any reaction from Tom Tabane on the latest developments with regards to the coalition and then the outlook for the next couple of days?
Well, we do hope to speak to him this afternoon as per the arrangements that we have made. We will see what he will say. But we did yesterday speak to the parties that are forming the new coalition. I did pose to Mr. Musisidi, in fact, the leader of this new coalition and the person who is set to be the Prime Minister, as to whether it wasn't a consideration at all to have Mr. Tabane form part of what, for lack of a better description, a national unity government, given that no one got an outright majority, and you have all these other 6-7 parties that are going to form a new coalition anyway. He said, no, that was never part of the deal. He cited a lot of things, among them how Mr. Tabane, they feel, was arrogant. He never consulted. He effectively ran roughshod over the interests of other partners in the coalition, and for those reasons, they believe that he wouldn't form part of the new coalition. He thinks that he will play, Mr. Musisidi, that is, thinks that Mr. Tabane will play a better role in the opposition benches, and then really ensuring that the leading coalition is on its toes.
Vuyo, thank you very much for that update. Our contributing editor coming to you live from the capital of Lesotho, Maseru, where, of course, a coalition has been formed. Our deputy president is there. There'll be lots of developments within the next 24 hours as the meetings continue there. Vuyo will keep us updated across all of our shows. So just stay with SABC News. But let's take a look at what's happening on Newsroom's Facebook page. There you have... You can read about the Higher Education Transformation Network's fraud charges against former Northwest University Vice-Chancellor Tiens Elof. Elof and 2 others are accused of illegally authorizing a transfer of 10 million rand into the Northwest Higher Education Trust Fund. Then, everything you want to know about the arms deal. The testimony of arms deal whistleblower Richard Young is expected to be heard in Pretoria today following failure on his part to testify yesterday. And Libya has sought permission from the United Nations to import arms, jets and 150 tanks from the Ukraine, Serbia and the Czech Republic to take on Islamic State militants and other extremists, they say. You can also find other stories on our Newsroom Facebook page, or for updates, the latest that is, you can visit our website, sabc.co.za/news. Time for us to take a break. We'll be back with more right after this.
Didier Drogba, a footballer from Ivory Coast, was named as the third most influential celebrity in Africa.
Where I saw him display, he's very nice player. He always make an impact.
Drogba donated his $5 million endorsement fee to the construction of a hospital in Abidjan.
Well, there are some lesser-known football stars in the continent that you haven't met.
Really?
And are deserving of more attention.
I think we will do better.
The Journal, every Saturday at 1:30 on SABC News.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. Let's just have a look at the stories making headlines today. As Cape Town residents who took refuge at a Newsroom community shelter have returned home, an estimated 5,000 hectares of land has been burnt in the South Peninsula. Firefighters are still keeping a close eye on the blaze that broke out in the mountains of Newsroom on Sunday. The wildfire was fueled by a southeasterly wind that spread to the Newsroom, Tokai and Hope Bay areas. Deputy President and SADC facilitator Cyril Ramaphosa is in Lesotho, where he is expected to pay a courtesy call to King Letsie III. Ramaphosa is also expected to meet with political role players before returning to South Africa. Yesterday, 5 opposition parties in Lesotho formed a new coalition government. This after snap elections over the weekend failed to produce an outright winner that brought an end to Prime Minister Tom Tabane's term of office. And in cricket, Bangladesh beat Scotland by 6 wickets in their Pool A Cricket World Cup match at the Saxon Oval in New Zealand. Scotland was sent to bat and set Bangladesh a target of 318 for 8. The Tigers reached the total in their 49th over with 11 balls to spare to edge closer to the quarter-final, thereby putting pressure on England. Remember, you can find all of those stories on Facebook. Just search for Newsroom. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Evan, back to you.
Thank you very much, Janine. Now, Kenya took a strong stance against the poaching of elephants and rhino and the selling of their horns and tusks this week. Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta made a statement by setting fire to a giant pile of 15 tons of elephant ivory and has promised to destroy the East African country's entire stockpile of tusks by the year's end. It's the third time that Kenya destroyed their stock of stored ivory to draw attention to poaching deaths. The occasion coincided with World Wildlife Day that was hosted by the Kenya Wildlife Service at the Nairobi National Park. Higher demand for ivory is fueling the elephant killings by poachers, not just in Kenya but across the continent. Save the Elephants said last year 100,000 elephants were killed between 2010 and 2012. Now, China has imposed a 1-year ban on ivory imports amidst criticism that its citizens' huge appetite for ivory threatens the existence of Africa's elephants. Now, our East African correspondent, Sarah Kimani, joins us on the line from Nairobi in Kenya. Very good morning to you, Sarah.
Good morning to you, Adam.
Sarah, a very strong stance and gesture by President Kenyatta. What has the reaction been by everyone in Kenya, really, after burning this massive stockpile of ivory?
Well, our conservationists have supported President Kenyatta's move, saying that it is a symbolic gesture that is going to send the right message that poaching and trade in ivory must stop. Of course, there are those who feel that this is not enough. They feel that the laws, even though now stronger, are not being used adequately to get people behind those linked to poaching. And of course, they feel that Kenya's ties to China, which is blamed for the highest number of people arrested for poaching, is not in Kenya's good interest.
A fantastic symbolic gesture to burn the stock. But the real fight should really be taken to the poachers in Kenya. Where is Kenya in the fight against elephant and rhino poaching?
Well, the country has made huge strides. Take, for example, now the law is very strict in terms of the number of years somebody can go behind bars, up to 10 years if you're found with ivory. And just this last year, towards the end of last year, a Kenyan who is linked to poaching in the East African region was actually extradited to Kenya, where he's now facing charges of illegal trade in ivory and poaching and being found with ivory. And so he's facing those charges. He's applied for bail several times, and the Kenyan government has appealed and said that he should not be given bail. So he's still behind bars. Kenya, in most cases, is seen to be very firm. And the passing of these laws, of course, seen as one of the reasons. President Kenyatta also saying during that banning ceremony that he's actually going, by the end of this year, ban the remaining stock will to be close to 100 tons of ivory in the country. He says the country will not have any stockpiles.
Now, 100,000 elephants is estimated to have been killed in the last couple of years on the continent. To what extent has Kenya been directly affected in this poaching scenario?
It has been affected greatly. Take, for example, the statistics we have from the Kenya Wildlife Service says that 164 elephants were killed last year, more than 300 the year before. But is that last year, among the elephants that died is an iconic elephant called Satao, one of the oldest in Kenya and probably in Africa, showing the boldness and probably the heartlessness of these poachers. Kenya indeed has been affected greatly by poaching.
And Sarah, what has been the reaction internationally, especially from the World Wildlife Fund, to this gesture of burning the stock? What are they saying?
Among the people who witnessed the burning of the ivory, actually, the stockpile was the U.S. Embassy, the UK Embassy officials, the United Nations actually was there, UNEP, and they all support this. They said this is a bold move by Kenya. They said this will send the right message that indeed Kenya and the whole world in ivory, and they say this will also show that if a lot of countries are committed to destroying their stockpiles, then maybe there will be nothing to be sold, and people will start believing that trade in ivory is not the right way to go, because it denies African countries a lot of money in terms of GDP.
Sarah, I thank you very much for that contribution. That's our East African correspondent coming to you live from Nairobi in Kenya. We're talking about the ivory stockpile, 15 tons of ivory that were burnt by President Uhuru Kenyatta on Tuesday this week there. Caused quite a bit of consternation, but sends the message. Now, let's have a look at your tweets. Please remember to send us your views, of course, at SABC Newsroom. Now, Karen Trendler says, every one of us can do something about wildlife crime. Be a responsible and ethical tourist. Very well said. Louis Botha Everson says at Anti-Poaching and at SABC Newsroom, conservation through utilization is the only viable option. Louis Botha Everson, I don't know about that. I see a lot of that not really working. Who benefits from the utilization? Conservation is the key question then. Karen Trendler says poverty may contribute to wildlife crime, but no doubt wildlife crime will lead to more poverty by diminishing resources. Yes, Karen, that is in fact true. Keith Martin, MD, says eliminating demand for illegal wildlife products is key to saving species from extinction. It'll be very difficult to do that in Asia, where the simple scenario is people want to own the most expensive stuff, or the thing that's the most difficult to get hold of. In this case, we're talking about ivory in China and rhino horn in Vietnam. So to show your status, you have to find, or you have to own the thing that is the most rare. In my mind, it's bordering on insanity, but what do I know? We move on. The long-awaited testimony of arms deal critic Richard Young will be heard by the Suriti Commission of Inquiry from today onwards. His appearance was postponed yesterday after lawyers for the Defence Department said they had not received adequate copies of his testimony, which runs to over 1,000 pages.
After almost 2 years, Richard Young gets to tell his side of the story. His involvement in the arms deal is twofold. His company, C²I² was one of the bidders to fit combat suites and defense systems into the acquired warships, the frigates. But when he lost the main contract, he turned whistleblower. Young claims politicians influenced the awarding of the corvettes and suites contracts to a German and French company, respectively. The French company had close business dealings with Shabir Sheikh.
There's obviously huge concerns over Young's statement. He's likely to implicate a number of people, including the president of this country. But he'll be expected to provide concrete evidence, something which has evaded most of the previous witnesses. Government has deployed some of the top lawyers to put his evidence to the test. Njanji Chauke, SABC News, Pretoria.
Now, Njanji joins us live from the Commission in the capital. Very good morning to you, Njanji. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Eben.
Richard Young seems like he's a slippery customer at the moment. Njanji, what's the expectation from him today?
Yes, Richard Young, he was supposed to appear here at the Commission in March 2013 already. When he was supposed to appear, he kept on asking for several documents which he wanted the Commission to make available to him. Then his testimony was postponed until July last year, and even then he didn't make it. He submitted a medical report telling the Commission that he had undergone an eye operation. But yesterday we saw the man arriving here very energetic and raring to go. But yesterday we experienced a number of problems in the sense that not all the legal teams have been able to access those bundles of documents. I mean, here I'm talking about documents running into over 1,061. As you know, that a number of people are being accused of fraud and irregularities in his statement. So it was very important that all the legal teams indeed access those documents. The Commission staff members had to work through the night to make sure that those bundles are prepared and conveyed to the relevant legal teams. A short while ago, I just saw more documents arriving, and Richard Young has just taken the stand. So what will be happening for the next hour? They will be going through his CV as he introduces himself to the Commission, and also just detailing his experience with regards to military issues and how he got involved with Armscor and the Navy. Yeben.
He's also accused the Commission of being one-sided and one-eyed in its views. Has he told you maybe why he believes that to be the case?
Yeah, we know why Richard Young has accused the Commission of being biased. First, he was complaining of accessing some of the key documents, but also he had a problem with the commissioners not allowing the legal teams to sort of grill some of the witnesses. You'll recall that if someone's name is mentioned, they first have to inform the lawyers, so that because they become an interested party. So what we have seen previously with this commission is most of the documents were labeled as highly classified, some of the documents not being given to some of the interested parties here. You'll recall that one of the key whistleblowers, the man who ensured that this commission does take place, they were very close with Richard Young himself. I'm talking about Terry Crawford Brown. He tried several times to cross-examine some of those witnesses, and then in some instances he was overruled, the commissioners interjecting, not allowing that line of questioning. But it remains to be seen what will be happening going forward. But what also concerned me as an ordinary viewer of South African was to see someone like Fanahlungwane appearing here at the commission last year. And when an opportunity arose to test his evidence or to cross-examine him, there was really no one to cross-examine him. So that was quite shocking to me as a journalist and an ordinary South African. considering the allegations that have been leveled against people like Fana Hlongwane in terms of bribery and corruption.
I thank you for your contribution. Njanji Chowki coming to you live from the Seriti Commission in the capital, Pretoria. He will keep us updated throughout the rest of the day and into this evening as to what comes out of the Commission's hearings today. Just to remind you, later this morning, AM News will cross live to Parliament for a post-cabinet briefing of its President. We'll have more details for you on that a little bit later. That's where we wrap it here at Newsroom. Of course, this show is broadcast live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. The show repeats at 2 in the afternoon with a rebroadcast at 5 a.m. the following day. We also stream live on YouTube at that time with a whole show available on demand on our YouTube channel. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom. We love it in the morning.